Walters is a great place to watch all of the NFL Week 1 action. Walters always prioritizes sound and prime central TV showing for the Commanders game. This Sunday afternoon, Washington and Jaden Daniels visit the Tampa Bay Bucks at 4:25.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Meyer coming home. Swing a high drive, deep right center field. Way back Pache to the warning track at the wall, and there it goes. Joey Gallo with a 3-run homer over the wall in right center field. A titanic blast for Gallo makes it 4-0 Nationals. Swinging a long drive right field for Ruiz. Way back it goes. This one is going, and it is gone into the Nationals bullpen. What a night for Keibert Ruiz. He has a double. He has a single. He has his 13th homer. The Nationals have a 5-1 lead.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Wednesday, September 4th, 2024, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. The lowly Miami Marlins, just what the Nationals needed off getting swept in 3 games against the Chicago Cubs at Nationals Park over the weekend. Tuesday evening, a 6-2 win at the Marlins in Game 1 of a 2-game series. The Nats for this regular season improved to 62-76. A big game for catcher Keibert Ruiz. More offensive production from center fielder Jacob Young. A third consecutive good outing for starting pitcher Patrick Corbin. The return of reliever Derek Law. A lot of good stuff for the Nats in this game. Coming up later in the show, an update on starting pitcher Cade Cavalli. But Mark, the Nats on Tuesday evening began a 6-game road trip that consists of 2 series against 2 of the worst teams in the majors. A 2-game series at the Marlins, a 4-game series at the Pittsburgh Pirates. We'll see what happens, but this has the potential to be a very good road trip for the Nats, and the road trip on Tuesday evening got off to a good start.
Well, we were talking the other day, Al, about what's the final win total going to be this year, and is there any fear of them not even topping last year's total of 71? And I said, well, they've got 10 games left against the Marlins and the Pirates, and that might be the saving grace. And if Tuesday night's game in Miami was any indication, that could help them very much get to that number and maybe even surpass it by quite a bit. It's nice to see them own another team for a change. It's been a while since this has been the case. They have completely dominated the Marlins. It's never felt like they were in danger of really losing any of these games, and it never felt like they were in danger of losing this one, to be honest. Good matchup for them. Good for them for taking advantage. And you know what I liked most about this one, Al? They played some really clean baseball. They needed that after the weekend they had against the Cubs. Nothing close to making a mistake in the field. I know they had a runner or 2 thrown out on the bases, but not anything egregious, I didn't think. This was a good, clean game that they were clearly the better team. It was nice to see that again from them.
Yeah, no drama, kind of an easy win, the likes of which I think they needed off what happened over the weekend for sure. So the Nats in this game, 6 runs, 11 hits, which were 2 home runs, 4 doubles, and 5 singles, 2 walks, 2 for 10 with runners in scoring position. The Nats were pretty equitable in terms of the run-scoring distribution here. A run in the top of the 3rd, 3 runs in the top of the 4th, a run in the top of the 6th, a run in the top of the 9th. And leading the way offensively was Keibert Ruiz, who needed a big game. He had a big game. Ruiz as the Nats starting catcher and number 8 batter, 3 for 4 with a solo homer, a double, and a single. He came into the game having gone 0 for 19 with no walks over his previous 5 games, but Ruiz and the Nats 1-run third, a leadoff first pitch double to right field, and that double per StatCast, exit velocity of 105.3 miles per hour, tied for being the third highest exit velocity of the game. Ruiz in the top of the fourth, a 2-out single to right field. That single per StatCast, exit velocity of 106.4 miles per hour, highest exit velocity of the game. And Ruiz in the Nats 1-run 6, a 2-out solo homer to right field for a 5-1 Nats lead. He hit for power. He hit balls hard. More of this, please, from Keibert Ruiz.
He came this close to a triple of all things, and I was hoping he would go for it. I decided to pull up at second base. That actually kind of proved important because he was ultimately a triple shy of the cycle, and if he had gone for it on that previous one, he would have just been a double shy for the cycle, a little more likely, I guess, to happen. Really nice to see him hit the ball with authority like that, drive a ball, multiple balls, but certainly the one over the fence. And I know the season numbers still are not good. I'm looking at a 222 average and a 616 OPS. Obviously, that's awful. But if you look at what he's done since mid-May, and he bottomed out in mid-May, he was, in the 400s with his OPS at that point. It's not great, but it's not awful. It's about a 250 batting average. It's an OPS in the 700s, slugging over 400. And it's about half a season's worth of baseball, and he's on a pace for like 30 doubles and 20 homers if you stretch that out to a whole season. So I think he's been better than we realized because the start of his season was so bad that it has taken forever to even get the numbers back up to a point that they might look respectable, and they still don't look respectable. But he has been at least okay, I think, for several months. Still a lot of work for him. He's got to be better next year. We know that. He's got to finish the year strong. We know that. But both at the plate and behind the plate, he's been a more respectable version of himself, I feel like, for a while now.
I think there are a few ways to look at Keibert Ruiz. So, first of all, he was one of the first big acquisitions in the rebuild, right? That big trade with the Dodgers, Max Scherzer, Trey Turner, Nats get back Keibert Ruiz and Josiah Gray and 2 other prospects. So, I always kind of look at him as he's not here to be okay, like he's here to be really good. And the truth is he has not been close to really good. However, with a defensive position like catcher, you don't have to be like superb offensively. If you can be good defensively and just adequate offensively, you can live with that. Now, the issue with him, of course, has been that the defense has not been great or even good. And so it's like, okay, you're not good offensively, you're not good defensively. What exactly are you bringing to the table? So if he's not going to be a great defensive catcher, he does need to be a good offensive catcher. And he hasn't been that nearly enough. But yeah, I mean, if he over the course of a season could give you an OPS around 740, 750, you could live with that. Absolutely. The problem is you can't have the OPS in the 500s. And that's where he has been for way too much of this season. And, it's odd with him, right? Because he was doing well. And then he had this recent skid of 0 for 19 with no walks over 5 games. And you're like, we're right back to where he was earlier in the season. And then he does what he did on Tuesday evening. And so there is this, wide range of outcomes with him where he can be good. He just isn't good often enough.
Yeah, consistency is a big thing. And we've said all along with him, it's about pitch selection. He swung at good pitches. He is the guy who they're okay with swinging down in the zone. Usually the message is always get the ball up, get the ball up. He can drive a ball that's down at his knees, and he did that on the home run in particular. But it's still about swinging at the right pitches, being willing to take a few more pitches when you have the opportunity to do that. So, I think the other way to look at him, and I get what you're saying, and I agree with everything you're saying there. I think, for better or worse, you kind of have to forget the backstory here. Forget who he was acquired for. Forget the contract that he got. And let's just evaluate him on what he is. What he is a below-average catcher right now in all facets who still has the potential to be an okay catcher. I think we need to stop thinking about him as being a generational franchise, big-time, middle-of-the-order kind of bat. Maybe he gets there someday, but right now the bar has to be lowered somewhat. But here's the thing. For the last few years, he's had to be a central point of this lineup because they just didn't have a lot else. All of a sudden, you're looking at a lineup that has Dylan Cruz and James Wood and a much better Luis Garcia C.J. Abrams, who's struggling now, yes, but is still a better hitter. And maybe Brady House coming in the near future. And maybe they sign a first baseman this winter. In the long run, even on a good team, he may be a number 7, number 8 hitter. And so I think you lower the bar somewhat and say, okay, just be that hitter you were describing. OPS in the low to mid 700s. Decent behind the plate. He was good behind the plate in this game. He stole some strikes for Patrick Corbin. I don't know if it was him or it was Mike Estabrook's strike zone, but it was better there. I feel like he has been better behind the plate. So again, he's not anywhere close to as good as everybody hoped he would be, but I do feel like he's been better. And maybe it's okay for us now to lower the bar somewhat. I know it's hard to do that because of the contract and the trade and everything else. But I think you got to start looking at it that way and say, okay, can he just exceed a certain level and be one player on a team that hopefully is going to have several players who are better than him anyways?
Big final month for Keibert Ruiz for sure. Hey, Al Galdi here to tell you about the latest great offer from Window Nation for listeners of the Nats Chat podcast. 2 free windows for every 2 windows that you buy, plus pay nothing with no interest for 2 full years. If you have been thinking about getting new windows, now is the time. Get with Window Nation, 866-90Nation or windownation.com, and tell Window Nation that you want the deal that you heard about from Al Galdi on the Nats Chat podcast. September has arrived. A great time to replace your old inefficient windows with energy-efficient windows from Window Nation. You can get a free, no-obligation quote from Window Nation right now. Contacting Window Nation and seeing what new Window Nation windows would costs you nothing, obligates you to nothing. 866-90Nation or windownation.com, and take advantage of the great offer for listeners of the Nats Chat podcast. 2 free windows for every 2 windows that you buy, plus pay nothing with no interest for 2 full years. 866-90Nation or windownation.com. That's 866-90Nation or windownation.com, and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Are you looking for tickets to an upcoming event? That's why you should download the Game Time app. Create an account and use code NATSCHAT for $20 off your first purchase. You get cheaper tickets, and it helps the podcast a bit. Sounds like a smooth 6-4-3 double play. Again, create an account and redeem the code NATSCHAT for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
And the pitch. Swinging a ground ball. Fair inside the first base bag down the line. Ruiz rounding third. He's coming home. Young trying for second. Hensley's throw there. The tag is in time. Young is out, but the Nationals take the lead as Ruiz scores. Nationals lead 1-0. Young gunned down at second. He'll settle for the RBI single.
Well, a guy who is demonstrating real improvement here lately offensively has been Jacob Young, and he continued to do that on Tuesday evening. Young, as the Nats starting center fielder and number 9 batter, got on base 4 times. He went 3 for 3 with a double, an RBI single, another single, and a walk. Young in the Nats' 1-run third, opposite field RBI single just inside the right field foul line, really into no man's land in right field, put the Nats up 1-0. Now, Young did get thrown out in his attempt to stretch the single into a double, but Young in the top of the 4th had a double, a 2-out opposite field ground rule double off the right field warning track on a 1-2 pitch. Young in the top of the 6th, a 2-out single through the left side of the infield, and Young in the Nats' 1-run 9th, leadoff 7-pitch walk, despite having been down in the count at 1.12. We know the deal with Young. Great defense, great base running. Can the batting be at least decent? Lately, it has been a lot more than decent. And Young now has raised his OPS for this regular season by 54 points over just the last few weeks. From 617 as of games through August 9th to now 671. That's not an easy thing to do this late in a season, raise your OPS by 54 points in less than a month's time. He has done that. He's been one of the Nats' best batters here over these last few weeks.
This has been a really nice and important stretch for him to establish that, as we've talked about, he can be at least enough of a productive hitter that you say, okay, obviously the glove is so good that we've got to keep him out there every day in center field. What I like is he's establishing an offensive identity here. He's getting pitched outside a lot. But what does he do with that pitch? He drives it to right field. And he can hit it over the right fielder's head and get a double out of it, even a triple at times if it bounces the right way. We know he can run the bases. We know he can put down a bunt when he needs to and sometimes beat it out. I think he's kind of figuring out who he is as a hitter, and that's fine. Again, the bar is lower on him than anybody else offensively. They just need him to get on base enough and drive in enough runs and hit in the right moments to be able to hit ninth in a lineup and then go play Gold Glove defense that he has. So to see him now step it up here in the last month or so and do that has been really nice to see, especially as Wood and Cruz have joined him in the outfield. It would be easy for him to get lost in the shuffle. And maybe you start having second thoughts about, is he really up to the standard that you want when you've got two other outfielders of that caliber around him? To this point, he absolutely has been. He's more than done his share offensively and defensively.
Yeah, and I know Davey Martinez loves to do the dual leadoff man thing and have Young bat in the 9 spot, but if Young keeps this up, I do think there's a case to be made of moving him up a few spots and getting him more plate appearances. Because again, if you're ranking the Nats' best batters over these last few weeks, Jacob Young is in, that top, 3, 4, 5, something like that. Like, he's doing a really good job and is hitting for some power. We starting to pile up some of these doubles. Speaking of doubles, James Wood, he on Tuesday evening had a double. He is the Nats starting left fielder and cleanup batter, went 1 for 4 with a double and a walk. Did strike out 2 more times, but Wood in the Nats 3-run fourth, a 5-pitch walk. Wood in the top of the 5th, a 2-out opposite field double to left field. The double per Statcast exit velocity, 103.4. That was the Nats' 5th highest exit velocity of the game. Dylan Cruz on Tuesday evening, Nats starting right fielder, number 1 batter, 1 for 5 with a single and a stolen base. He did get thrown out in an attempted steal, but Cruz in the top of the 1st, a leadoff single into left field. That single per Statcast, exit velocity of 105.3, tied for being the 3rd highest exit velocity of the game. But it was in that inning that Cruz then got thrown out in an attempted steal of second base for the first out. Boy, I hope that Dylan Cruz does not get infected with the Nats' bad base running itis. And that was like the first thought that hit me when he got thrown out there. I'm like, oh boy, now this guy's been infected with this ailment that has plagued so many Nats players this season. But a good looking single from Cruz in that first inning.
Yeah, hit the ball with authority. Had his first 0 for, or at least as far as reaching base in the other game. So he's now reached base in 6 out of his 7 big league games. You can't ask for a whole lot better than that. The caught stealing, not ideal, of course. You want him to be a little more efficient than that, but it is part of his game. He's not forcing it. This is not something that he's trying to become like who the Nationals want him to be. No, he does run and is very comfortable running. It just got to, pick his spots maybe a little bit better. That was good from him. I thought in right field, and I don't know if this was just playing in Miami for the first time with the roof and the lack of fans or anything like that. I thought he looked a little uncomfortable in right field. Not that they were plays that he should have made, but going after a few, I felt like he maybe got a little bad break on it, let some balls get over his head, and was content to play him off the wall. I'll be interested it's only 2 games, so it's not like he's getting a great opportunity, but maybe on Wednesday, having played there once already, he has a little better feel for it. I wouldn't be surprised. He wouldn't be the first to show up there in that ballpark in those conditions and just not be 100% comfortable out there. But I felt like there was a little bit of that watching him in right field in this game.
There were camera shots during this game where it looked like nobody was at the game. Like, it looked like a COVID game. It looked like fans were not allowed to be at the game. Like, at certain points when you're watching the game, it looked like literally nobody was in the stands. I wanted to ask you about this with Cruz. We have not seen him at all in center field. Do you think we will see him at all in center field before this Nats season is over?
I do. That was the plan coming in. I know they wanted to give Jacob Young a couple of days off at least. He's played basically every day forever now. I've lost track of the last time he had a day off. And if they do that, it will be Dylan in center field is my understanding of it. The question is, what do? Do you put Gallo in right? If Alex Call hadn't gotten hurt, it would be a lot easier to do this. They could concoct a scenario where you have Darren Baker in left field and James Wood in right field. It's moving a lot of guys around, but if it's a look you want to get a look at and see how they do in those situations. It might be something we see at some point, but I do expect to see him in center at least a couple of times. Number one, them knowing that Jacob Young needs a day off here at some point. Number two, wanting to see how Cruz does in center field in a big league game, because obviously he's played that plenty in the minor leagues.
Well, you mentioned Joey Gallo. He did homer in this game on Tuesday evening. That is not a statement we have been able to say often this season. Joey Gallo homered, but he did homer in this game. Gallo as the Nats starting first baseman and number 6 batter, 1 for 4 with a 3-run homer. Gallo in the Nats 3-run fourth, 1 out first pitch, 3-run homer to center field for a 4-0 Nats lead. That homer going a projected 415 feet per StatCast, his first major league home run since June 3rd. And yes, that is a function in part of him having dealt with a good bit of injury this season, but that also is a function in part of him just not having had a very good season. He obviously was signed to hit home runs. He has not hit many home runs, but you're reminded of this when he hits that homer on Tuesday evening. He can do this. That was the whole point of the Nats acquiring him, and at least we did see it on Tuesday evening. We haven't seen it often enough, though, this season.
So in this game, as a team, they went 2 for 10 with runners in scoring position. Not good. Well, how did they win so easily? They hit 2 home runs, and one of them was a 3-run homer. How many times have we mentioned how much power can make up for a lack of all these other issues they have, and how when they don't hit home runs, it exposes everything else? Boy, what do you know? There it was on display in this one. Joey Gallo has been, dare I say, good since coming off the IL, or at least okay when you take full stock of everything. I know it's the first home run that he's hit, but he, I think, has had better quality at bats. He hasn't struck out quite as much. He's actually had some productive, hits other than home runs. He's driven in runs on singles and doubles and even an RBI ground out, which I know is not always his thing to do. Obviously played good defense at first base. I mean, it's way too little, way too late for it to matter, but it's been nice to see him at least be somewhat the version of Joey Gallo that they thought they were going to have all year long.
I think it's tough. It kind of goes back to the Keibert Ruiz conversation. The one thing he's supposed to give you more than anything is the home run. He hasn't done that. So, you're right. He has had some base hits, and he hasn't been, horrible since he came back. I give him credit for that. And his defense at first does stand out, especially when you see some of these other guys who have not been so great defensively at first base. But the Nats, these last few years, they unfortunately have had this run of signing veterans for the purpose of hitting homers, and the guys have not hit homers, whether it's Nelson Cruz or Joey Gallo, even like Corey Dickerson. The idea was that he could give you some pop. He didn't do that. Even Cesar Hernandez, the idea was that he could maybe give you some pop. He didn't do that. So it has not been a great run these last few years, signing veterans to these prove it, show me contracts and them providing power. Just has not happened. But nice to see Gallo hit that homer, and he hit that well on Tuesday evening for sure.
Hey, Nats Chat, want to tell you about Mint Mobile's premium wireless package starting at $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/natschat. That's mintmobile.com/natschat. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/natschat. $45 upfront payment required. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigs on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
Join us at Walters on Friday, October 4th for our end-of-season podcast party. The evening is scheduled from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m.
For those interested in learning a new language, whether it be Spanish, French, or something else, check out Babbel. Babbel's 10-minute lessons are quick and handcrafted by over 200 language experts, ready to get you talking about your new language in just 3 weeks, because talking is the key to really knowing any language. Designed by real people for having real conversations, Babbel gets you talking. With over 16 million subscriptions sold, Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by a 20-day money-back guarantee, so no pressure. Here's a special limited-time deal for our listeners right now. Get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for Nats Chat listeners at babbel.com/natschat. Get up to 60% off babbel.com/natschat. Spelled BABBEL.com/natschat. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Garcia delivers, swing and a miss. He blows him away with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball. And a Curly W's in the books here in Miami. Garcia comes in and strikes out the side to close this one out.
So the Nats' starting pitcher in this 6-2 win at the Marlins on Tuesday evening was Patrick Corbin, and he was good for a third consecutive start. Corbin allowed 2 runs in 5 2/3 innings with 8 strikeouts. Now, he did put a good number of guys on base, gave up 7 hits, which were 3 doubles and 4 singles, issued 3 walks, but the run prevention was there. Corbin, 93 pitches, 58 strikes, 35 balls. You look at his last 3 outings now. So his previous outing was the previous Tuesday evening, August 27th, the Nats 4-2 win over the New York Yankees at Nationals Park. Corbin, in that game, 6 scoreless innings, 6 strikeouts. The outing prior to that one, August 22nd, 8-3 win over the Colorado Rockies at Nationals Park. Corbin, in that game, 1 run in 6 innings, 8 strikeouts versus 1 walk. It's not just the lack of runs allowed for Corbin during this stretch. It is the strikeouts that he has generated. 3 runs in 17 2/3 innings, 22 strikeouts. He has been a strikeout pitcher over these last 3 starts. Now, after his last outing, we talked about some of the recent adjustments that he has made. But for a third consecutive outing, he goes out there, overall pitches, not great, but, well, certainly not bad. And the strikeout was once again in effect.
The strikeouts are what stand out to me most of all, because that's not who he's been in quite a long time. And we've talked about through all his struggles over the last several years about he doesn't have that out pitch. He can't put away hitters. And now he's relying on contact and defense. And you saw what the end result of all that was over the last 4 years. So for him to actually be able to get guys out on his own to get swings and misses is huge. And again, too little, too late to really matter for the Nationals right now, but it's been nice to see. The slider was on point in this one. Fastball command was good. He was getting those strikes at the knees or below, both thanks to Mike Estabrook behind the plate and Keibert Ruiz's pitch framing. It was all really nice to see, and it leaves you wondering, like, was this in there all along? Why did it take till now to find this? It's too late to matter around here, but he may very well be pitching himself into a contract somewhere for next year. I don't think it's going to be back here. I think they're ready to move on from that. I think they need a little more of a sure thing here if they're going after free agent starting pitchers. But he may be saving his career here over the final month of the season, the final month of the 6-year contract that, as we know, outside of year 1 turned into a complete disaster.
Well, it's hard to know what to make of it, right? Because 2 of these 3 outings have come against 2 of the worst teams in baseball in the Rockies and Marlins. But the other outing was against the Yankees, and Corbin did well against them. I have said that my mantra for Corbin the rest of this season is strive to be under 5. Finish with an ERA of under 5 for this regular season. His ERA now is down to 5.41. Now, that is the worst ERA among all qualified pitchers in the majors, but that is within striking distance of being less than 5. Can he do that? Can he shave off the 0.41, or I guess it would have to be the 0.42, to be under 5? Is that possible? Can he do that, do you think?
Well, I was thinking along those lines as well after he got through the first 4 scoreless. And I think I checked at that point, it was down to like 5.2 something. And so it definitely looked like it was in play. And then he gave up a couple of runs late. So it's going to require quite the finish from him. But let's look at who he would be facing the rest of the way. He should go Sunday against the Pirates and potentially Paul Skeens. Quite the matchup that will be on Sunday in Pittsburgh, but the Pirates, not a great lineup. He should get the Marlins again next weekend. That would be advantageous for him. Then he's looking at the Cubs and a final start either against the Royals, maybe the Phillies. I think it would be against the Royals, who are a surprisingly good team and playing for something here in late September. So I think it boils down to these next 2 against the Pirates and the Marlins. I think he's got to get it under or really close to 5 by that point to give himself a little bit of leeway for those final starts against some better opponents. Clearly, the number one storyline of the final 3.5 weeks of the national season, the drive to get under 5 from Patrick Corbin.
Well, what I want to know is this. If he gets to under 5 and he has one start left to make, does Davey not let him make that start? Kind of like if you have a batter who's leading in the batting average race and you don't play him the last day of the season to preserve that. Would Davey do that to Corbin to keep that ERA under 5? We'll see. We'll see. But that is of principal focus right now. Strive to be under 5. Patrick, you can do it, baby. Let's see if you can come through. The Nats bullpen in this 6-2 win at the Marlins on Tuesday evening. Great. 3 Nats relievers combined for 3 1/3 scoreless innings with 5 strikeouts. Jose A. Ferrer, 1 1/3 perfect innings with 2 swinging strikeouts. He actually helped to save the Patrick Corbin ERA. Ferrer came into the game in the bottom of the 6th with runners on first and second, 2 outs, and the Nats holding a 5-2 lead, and Ferrer generated a 4-pitch swinging strikeout of Nick Fortes, and Ferrer then tossed a perfect bottom of the 7th. We then had the return of Derek Law. He tossed a scoreless bottom of the 8th, despite issuing a leadoff walk and giving up a 1-out single. Now, he over his 15 pitches threw just 8 strikes versus 7 balls, so he was not at his best, but he is back, and that is a very good thing. The Nats on Monday morning announced having reinstated Law from the 15-day injured list. He had been on that since August 17th due to a right elbow flexor strain, so he ended up missing minimal time with that injury. And then Robert Garcia, who, as we have noted, can be dominant, can also be quite bad. He was dominant. He tossed a perfect bottom of the 9th with 3 strikeouts, so a very good outing for this Nats bullpen.
And just a continuation of what they've done. I know Sunday was a disaster against the Cubs, but take that game out. Over the course of the month of August, Nationals relievers had a 2.86 ERA and a 1.232 WHIP. And this was without Derek Law for a couple of weeks, and obviously following the trades of Dylan Floro and Hunter Harvey. Jose Ferrer has been quite good here lately. It's nice to see him healthy and showing signs of being really a shutdown lefty that they hope he can be for a long time. That's been really nice to see. I thought Derek Law was a little rusty in his first appearance back. Not surprising, but he got through it. Didn't allow any of his own inherited runners to score in this one since he put them on himself. And then Garcia, I mean, man, we got the good version of him, which is amazing. You just wish that he had that ability to find something in between that and the really bad version of himself when he's not on a given night, because the best version of himself is outstanding. That was so good from him. And, I'm thinking to myself, they had Finnegan warming because it's a 3-run lead. He hadn't pitched in 6 days. They tack on the extra run, and all of a sudden Finnegan sits down, Garcia's warming up, and like, all right, here we go. 4-run game, no longer a save situation. He's going to put Garcia in, and guess what's going to happen? The moment a runner gets on base, Finnegan's going to have to start warming up again anyways and maybe come into the game. And what did Garcia do? No. 1, 2, 3, strike out the side. Finnegan could sit and watch the rest of the 9th inning without even having to think about getting hot again. So good stuff there from Robert Garcia. You just got to see more of that.
Had the Nats traded Finnegan, I wondered if maybe we might get some looks at Garcia closing out games just because he has closer stuff. Now, can you rely on him as, your ace reliever? That's to be determined. I don't know that he's reliable enough just yet to be put in that spot, but the stuff is there. That is quite clear. It's funny with the Nats bullpen. They still rank in the bottom third of the majors in relief pitching ERA when you look at the numbers for this regular season. So, it's an odd deal. There's a lot to take in with it. I know ERA for relievers isn't the best way to judge them, but it does feel like the bullpen more often than not has been good this season. Part of the problem, of course, is that when the bullpen is bad, it can be really bad, like we saw the other day. And so, the, overwhelming majority of the runs given up come in this, minimal amount of games. So you're used to seeing the bullpen be good, but when it's bad, it's so bad that wrecks the numbers. But yeah, there's a lot to sort of process with the bullpen, because I do feel like this bullpen has been appreciably better than Nats bullpens from previous seasons, even though the numbers for the season don't necessarily reflect that.
Yeah, agree. I think it's the blow-up games when they've been really bad that skew everything. That's been a big part of it. But I agree. This has been, throughout the season, one of the better bullpens we've seen here in a while. And the fact that they've been able to be all right without Harvey, without Floro, and for the last 2 weeks, without Law, is stunning. I thought that was going to be such a drop-off when they traded those guys. And props to Tanner Rainey finally stepping up, to Garcia, to Ferrer, Eduardo Salazar, Jacob Barnes, who started the year as like the last man in the bullpen, and all of a sudden he's in a prime setup role. They have done a nice job overall, and I get it. The numbers aren't great. You have those blow-up games, I think, that skew it a lot. But I think they should be feeling a lot better about the state of their bullpen than they have in quite a while. And most of these guys should be back next year. Garcia under club control, Ferrer under club control. Even Derek Law is still arbitration eligible and under club control. We know Finnegan is coming back. I think they'll try to sign one or two more experienced guys to help at the back end. But it should not have to be a complete makeover of the bullpen this winter, which is a nice position to be in.
And from a macro perspective, it demonstrates an aptitude for constructing a bullpen, which we know has been a problem for the organization for a while. So if they've gotten better at that, that's very good news. Well, also with the Nats on Tuesday was news on starting pitcher Cade Cavalli, who is yet to pitch in the majors this season off undergoing Tommy John surgery in March 2023. So he threw off a mound on Tuesday, threw off a mound for the first time since his last minor league rehab outing, which was all the way back on June 21st, was for High A Wilmington. But truth be told, the more significant item with Cavalli on Tuesday was us essentially getting confirmation that it does not appear as if he will be pitching in the majors this season. Davey Martinez didn't flat out say that, but if you listened to his comments during his pregame session with reporters, it very much came off that way, that we're just basically out of time for this to happen, him pitching in the majors.
I'd like to see maybe, throw somewhere, whether it's the minor league or something, just get on the mound and face hitters. Hopefully we get to that point. If we don't, we still have, months to progress him and get him ready for spring training.
So as we have discussed with Cavalli, he this season has dealt with multiple setbacks in this comeback from Tommy John, dealt with the flu, then dealt with a dead arm. And at this point, you're looking at just a handful of weeks left in the single A and double A portions of the season. I know triple A has a little more time, but the notion of him, being worked up, being ramped up to where he could pitch in a major league game just does not appear to be realistic at this point.
No, I don't think there's any reason at this point to force that issue. Maybe you can get to a point where he faces some live hitters in like a simulated game that last week of the season, just so he can see how the stuff plays against hitters and in a very controlled environment. I think that would be the best case scenario right now. It's really unfortunate. We're talking about 2 lost seasons with him. You hope at least he gets to the end of this and he feels like, I'm feeling fine now. Go have a quote-unquote normal offseason, start ramping up again in January, come to spring training ready to go, and we'll find out. But, for somebody who I think a year ago or even less than a year ago, we kind of assumed was going to be a part of the long-term plan of the rotation, just like Josiah Gray, I don't think we're thinking in those terms anymore. Maybe it happens. It would be great if it does. But they've got other young pitchers who've stepped up. I would like to think they're going to be active in free agency, at least for one experienced starter. Now that Corbin's finally off the books. So I don't want to say they don't need Cavalli or need Josiah Gray, but to me, I kind of feel like it's a bonus if it happens. And they've positioned themselves where they don't have to rely on both those guys to be a big part of it. It would be great if they could, just for their own sake, especially in Cavalli's sake, because you're talking about a guy who's only made one big league start and just been beset by injuries ever since. So you hope that does happen. But from the national standpoint, I think they've tried to position themselves as best as they could, that they could afford for it not to happen and not have it be that damaging to them.
I mean, if you say, okay, what is the worst development this national season? The answer probably is Josiah Gray getting hurt as he did. But if you tell me it's what's happened with Cade Cavalli, I'm not going to argue with you on that. This is really disheartening what has happened here. Him missing now what looks like 2 full major league seasons due to the Tommy John. And these seasons are counting against his major league service time, which makes for kind of a double whammy with all of this. But, it is remarkable. You go back to when he made his major league regular season debut, August 26th, 2022, more than 2 years ago now. It was a 7-3 loss to the Cincinnati Reds at Nationals Park. Cavalli in that game, 7 runs in 4 1/3 innings. If I had told you on that night he is not going to make another major league regular season start for more than 2 years, you would have said, what? Like, what? But that's exactly the case. And remember, he made that start, and then he went on the 15-day injured list. They put him on the 15-day IL just a few days later due to right shoulder inflammation. And then March 2023, he undergoes the Tommy John. Here's my question with what has happened with Cade Cavalli this season. So you have the two setbacks, the flu and the dead arm. The flu is random, nothing you can do about that. The dead arm, what is that? Is that indicative of him not being right off the surgery, or is that just, a natural, normal issue that a pitcher can have of not having thrown a lot recently? Because there's a big difference between those two scenarios, and if the former is the case, that's worrisome, that he's not right coming off the Tommy John. If the latter is the case, and hey, a dead arm is just something that happens, okay. The way Davey Martinez has framed this is there's nothing really to be worried about long term.
I think he's going to be really fine. I really do. I mean, I saw him come out earlier and throw the ball really well.
But that's my one real concern here is that dead arm that in a lot of ways has been the thing that has prevented him from pitching in the majors this season. What was that? What was that a function of? And I guess we just don't really know for sure.
I wish I knew the answer to that, Al. And if we're going to believe Davey and Cade and anybody else with the team who's talked about it, you want to believe that it wasn't that serious and they were just being especially cautious with a guy coming back from Tommy John. And I understand if that's true, I can understand the approach they've taken to it. What I'll say is when I've heard of other pitchers dealing with dead arms, usually a spring training issue. For guys who are not necessarily coming off of injuries, it's just you're building your arm up and you have that one time where, boy, it just doesn't feel great. It's just not coming out well. My arm just doesn't feel like it has the usual life on it. And generally speaking, they'd either skip a start or give them a couple extra days, and then they come back out and they're fine. And you never hear about this again as they keep going. So I think the real question is, had they just let Cavalli deal with that and come right back and keep throwing again, what would have happened? If it really wasn't a big deal, he probably would have been okay and just kept building up, and maybe he's already pitching the big leagues by now. But for whatever reason, whether they were concerned that it was more serious, or they just said, this guy's coming off Tommy John, let's not take any chances, let's shut him down again, we'll never know. And it's cost him the rest of the season because of that. I guess check back next spring. We'll see how he looks, how he's throwing. I did get the sense that throughout the process, even when he was making those minor league starts, there was one that they felt like was good, and the others, not just the results weren't great, but felt like the mechanics were maybe off and ball wasn't coming out as well as they hoped. So there were a few little red flags thrown in there that made me think something doesn't seem like it's 100% here. He is throwing off a bullpen mound, so that's good. Like if he was really hurt, he wouldn't be doing that. So hopefully it was just a setback that just they were being careful with, but we're not really going to know, I don't think, until next spring when we really see him pitching again.
Game 2 for the Nats at the Marlins, Wednesday evening at 6:40. Mackenzie Gore will be the Nats starting pitcher. You tell us what you think. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can email the podcast, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on our website, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.